Hi folks, this is the Open Your Mind Radio solar generator, and we're going to go through the bits and pieces that we have and what we're going to use to make the solar generator, and we're going to build it bit by bit, and you'll see the end result at the end of the video. That's the plan anyway. So we're going to start off with going through the components. We will have a graphic on the website with all the components on it, so you can have a look yourself in detail what we're using. The first component, obviously what you see there on camera, is a battery box, and that's just a standard battery box. I think it was about €18, something like that, to buy. And basically you need the battery box to put your battery in, and also all the components that we're going to be installing in the battery box will go in. What we have in here is just a battery box, and we have the cable that wraps around the actual battery box itself just to keep the lid on. And when you take off the battery box, we have the battery inside there, and you also have a divider in the battery box as well, and you'll put that just to hold the battery in place so it's nice and secure. The next thing that you see there is the actual battery. Now this is a Numax marine deep cycle battery. It's 110 amp hour. Okay, now a lot of people talk about using car batteries. Not really good for solar generators. We don't recommend them, but they will do in emergency. The reason why you don't use car batteries is because car batteries are designed to deliver short, high current bursts for starting the engine, and they're designed to discharge only a very small part of their capacity. A daily cycle of using most of the capacity would corrode a car battery very quickly. The plates and the chemistry are designed to stay nearly 100% fully charged most of the time. For solar charging applications, you instead want a deep cycle battery similar to those used for the marine vessels or golf carts. This is a deep cycle battery here that we have. A typical car battery will not work. Deep cycle batteries are designed with larger plates and different chemistry to avoid the corrosion effect of frequently using the full capacity. They are designed to be regularly deeply discharged using most of its capacity. So the high quality batteries, and you could probably use up to about 80% of the capacity of the battery. You wouldn't use the whole capacity of the battery, but you'd use up to about 80%. So if you are going to be using a battery, you need to get a deep cycle battery. Right, the next few parts, next few components that we need to, as part of the build of our solar generator. This here is called a charge controller. And this is a 12 to 24 volt 10 amp charge controller. This is a PWM, not an MPPT. Now I'm not going to go into detail as to what the difference is, but basically the PWM is actually cheaper and it's less efficient. If you are and have the money, if you're going to buy a charge controller, obviously go for an MPPT. They're more expensive, but they're more reliable as well. Better efficiency, but we have a very tight budget, so we went for the PWM. We also have a dual USB adapter with digital voltmeter and on-off switch. Okay, so we have two one for USB, one for car lighter, a voltmeter, and then an on-off switch as well. Now I've got some wires coming out of this. I've already put wires on the actual adapter just to speed up the process. Now if you look at these, one terminal is copper and the other terminal is silver, and the reason why that is because the copper terminal is negative and the silver terminal is positive. So if you ever get anything like this and it does no markings of whether it's positive or negative, chances are the copper one is always going to be negative and the silver one is positive. Something to remember when you're wiring this up. So when you buy one of these, and you can get one on Amazon or you can get one on eBay, and they're a few quid. So there you go, you have your USB for putting in your USB adapters there, your voltmeter, your on-off switch, and your cigarette lighter, or if you have a sat nav or anything like that you want to put in, you can put in there. So they're a few quid on Amazon or eBay. Right, next on the list. Right, next on the list we have, this is an inverter. And this is a 600 watt inverter, 12 volt 600 watt inverter. And what this does is it converts the DC current from the battery to AC current to your home, 220, 240. So if you have something that's under 600 watts of power, you can plug it in. So you have the best of both worlds. With this solar generator that we're building, you're going to have the best of both worlds. You're going to have DC 12 volt power, and you'll have 240 volt power. So that's your inverter. Now these inverters come in all different sizes, but this one is 600 watt. This is something that I inherited personally, so that's why I'm using this one here. Alright, so that's the inverter there. Next we have the oh, by the way, that inverter it's actually not a pure sine wave inverter, it's a modified sine wave inverter. The pure sine wave inverters are better, you get a cleaner supply, but they're more expensive. So just to give that a mention there. Right, now we have standard, you can get this in Halford's, standard black and red cable. This is 17 amp Halford's black and red cable. And that's good, that's what we're using on this device here. On the adapter, that's the same stuff there, that's just 17 amp. So using that cable. This is 8 gauge cable, and we're going to be using this to wire the inverter, because you're going to be dealing with strong currents from the battery, so you need thick cable. This is 8 gauge cable, and that's quite thick, so you need to get some of that. Right. Next on the cards is the battery terminals, and obviously if you're wiring up the actual battery, you need to have battery terminals to put the cables to. So these are just battery terminals that you can get for your battery. They fit on the main battery, they're all standard, and they're quite cheap to get. And then of course what we need is little clips to actually terminal clips for the cabling, for the 8 gauge cable to the battery. And also if we want to use these for any other cable, we can use them as well. So they're handy, so we have a few of them. So we will put up a picture on the video showing you all the parts, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go through the build bit by bit and show you what we're doing. Okay, we're also going to be adding this device in. It's a battery level meter, and basically it tells us how much power is going to be in the actual battery, and it's a good gauge, a good way to check it. So you have 10%, 60% and 100%. So we'll be installing that as well as part of the install. So we've now installed the USB adapter in the box. You can see it fits snugly just underneath the handle, and if we look inside, that's what it looks like there. The connectors are, I've just pre-wired them just to speed up the actual installation process. The copper is negative, the silver is positive, and we'll just put them, we'll wire them in now and get them all connected, get them soldered up. Now, I know people will say you can use spade connectors, but because of the thickness of the gauge of the cable, and we be using multiple cables on the terminals, the spade connectors just gets a bit messy. So we thought a solder joint would be much better, and it'd be much more solid and less chance of it coming off. So that's why we decided to use the solder rather than the actual spade connectors. So we'll go off now and do the wiring, and then we'll show you that when we get back. Well, okay, so we have the wiring done now. We have these are the wires that will go to the battery, and then we have a switch on these sockets here, and basically we need a switch, so we don't want the actual battery drained of power, because when these are live there's a voltage going to these. So basically what we need to do is be able to switch them off, and that's why we have a switch on that. And then inside they're just wired. So that's it really. So the next stage will be to put the battery in and do a bit more wiring on the switch. But we will show you, this is the drill bit that we used to do the round holes, and you can buy this drill bit in Halfords, about €15. And this is a great drill bit for doing holes, straightforward, does a brilliant job. So if you can get that to drill circular holes, it's ideal. So what we've done is we've done all the wiring, as you can see there. We've done all the wiring for the actual USB adapters, and we've also wired in the power meter. We'll just lift it up there. There's the power meter there, which will tell us how much power is in the battery. Volt meter there. And then what you do is from the switch you wire them into the actual battery. So hopefully what should happen is when we switch it on, there you go. So we're getting 12.5 volts on the battery, and we have a full charge on the battery. So that doesn't take up power, we can switch it all off. Now we might need to, because this is a big marine battery, this box might be a little bit on the small side, so we might need to get a bigger box, but we are just experimenting at the moment, and it kind of does the job. It will fit on, but we think a bigger box would be better. So the next stage now will be to get the charge controller set up on the box, and also to get the inverter on and test that as well. So we'll be back in a few minutes. Hi folks, right, we've just done a bit more cabling. We've installed the charge controller, and we've installed the inverter. Now what we did earlier on was we have the power meter to tell us exactly how much power the battery has, the voltmeter as well. We have the switch to switch it all on, and your USB sockets on your cigarette lighter. If you switch them on, that's the status at the moment, 12.4. Okay, so we switch that off. Now what we have here, this is the charge controller, and you have 3 inputs on the charge controller. The first 2 are your solar panel. Now we're going to do a separate video regarding solar panels, but the solar panel would plug into here. Then the next 2 is your battery. So we have 2, a black and a red cable going from there to the battery inside onto the battery terminals. And then these 2 here are for if there's an overload, or there's a load that you want to put on, like a light bulb or something, to use up the extra power, you can do that. People very rarely use that. these are the two connectors that you need. Now, we have the inverter on as well. It's not stuck on, so we have to fix that on. But just to show you that the inverter works, we'll show you that. Now there's two 8 gauge black and red cables going straight to the battery as well. And this is a 600 watt inverter, which means that you can power something or power devices up to 600 watts. I wouldn't recommend doing 600. I'd recommend keeping it to about 500 just in case, because there's no surge protection on this inverter. It's purely a 600 modified sine wave, so the quality of the power is not great. But just to show you that it does work, this is my emergency light bulb, and it's an LED bulb. It's 7 watts and it's 0.055 of an amp, and it's basically you plug it into the mains. So if we turn on the inverter, whoa, we now have 240, 220 power. Let me just plug it off there. So that gives us power. The battery, as I say, it's 110 amp hours and it's a 12 volt DC. So roughly we would get 1320 watts of power from the battery. But you would not use that because you have to take in the equipment and the lack of efficiency on some of the equipment. So I wouldn't really use 1320 watts because that's full capacity, and I'd recommend only using about 80% of the battery, which works out to be 1056 watts. So that would be the maximum. So what you have to do is you have to work out how many things you want to power and the wattage of each item, and you add it all up, and then you divide that into 1056, and it'll give you how many hours you can power them devices for before you start running out of power. Now we'll throw up a few equations on the actual on the video as well for you to see, so you can work out what we're talking about regarding the power. It's not fully completed. We do have to secure the inverter, and we have a couple of more things to do, but that's the fundamentals of what a solar generator is. The solar panel that we have will connect into the charge controller, and that will be trickle charging. There'll be a light here that comes on when it's charging the actual battery, and I'll trickle charge the battery and keep that topped up. We'll do another video regarding the solar panel and the charge controller, and we'll show you that working. But for the time being, that's basically the basics of a solar generator. And I can carry this solar generator around. Steve has one as well. We can carry around the house, and we can power devices up to play it safe, 500 watts of power. And in an emergency, if there's a power down, at least you can have lights in your house that you can use. Maybe if you have a DC, you can get by 12 volt DC kettles, and they're fairly cheap, and you can plug it in, have your cup of tea, and if you want to watch your TV, if you have a low power TV, you can use that. So loads of benefits of having a solar generator, and if anything happens down the line, then we can use this technology. We will be doing more videos. We'll probably be upgrading this and making better quality solar generators, but this is just to give you a rough idea of what needs to be done with a solar generator, what you can do for a few quid.